CIA Director John Brennan now joins us, who also was Homeland Security Advisor in the National Security Council for President Obama. So I want to ask you first your reaction to Judge Cannon dismissing the classified documents case, because potentially, does this open the door to him getting those documents back that he claimed were his, not the government's? And what are the implications of that? Or can he show documents to people?
Well, it certainly is disappointing for a number of national security professionals who have been watching this case very closely. It raises questions about Judge Cannon's objectivity as well as judicial integrity, given that there have been previous rulings along these lines that really have, I think, disadvantaged the ability of the special counsel to move forward. But it's important for individuals like Donald Trump to have their time in court to try to defend themselves if they have been charged with, in this case, the reckless mishandling of some of this country's most sensitive secrets, which clearly happened at Mar-a-Lago and after Donald Trump left the White House. So, as Mary said, there are other options, and I think it is important to be able to hold individuals accountable, but to make sure that they are able to have their day in court if they are going to appeal any type of movements or charges against them.
And I want to ask you about the assassination attempt, because when you saw the footage, 148 yards, you have a military background as well as intelligence and Homeland Security. What was your immediate response?
Well, I think, as everybody has mentioned, the fact that an individual was able to get a position, of an elevated position, and have a clear line of sight to the podium where an individual, a protectee, is going to be standing for an extended period of time, it was just really quite surprising. And it's unclear at this point whether or not the Secret Service was relying on the local officials to be able to ensure that that building was not going to be used as a rooftop point of access for a sniper to carry out that strike, because 150 yards or so is well within the range of AR-15, a semi-automatic weapon, which has a range of 500 to 600 yards. So it is clear that something went wrong. Somebody missed their assignment, and that's why I think it is important for there to be this independent investigation, as President Biden said, about what happened, and to make sure that never again will this happen with any other protectee, given that the Secret Service is heavily involved in so many protective activities for people, and they have to rely on those state and local officials that have more manpower. So any type of missteps that were made or miscommunication that was made, it has to be addressed and ensure that it doesn't happen again.
And you were clearly involved in Homeland Security decisions and advice to the former president, President Obama. What do you think about the repeated requests by RFK Jr. for security that now Donald Trump has also endorsed in a Truth Social post? And perhaps the threat environment, despite his lack of, widespread support as a candidate, is greater, especially his name.
Well, I think it's a legitimate request. Now it's going to be up to Secretary Mayorkas of Homeland Security in consultation with the White House and President Biden to determine whether or not there should be some type of Secret Service protection afforded to RFK Jr. He does not qualify under the traditional rules that the Secret Service and the White House has used in previous campaigns and presidential election seasons. But again, given what we just saw in Pennsylvania, and given the heightened environment in the United States in terms of the emotions and passions that are running deep, as President Biden said last evening, I do think it's worth a review to see whether or not there could be some type of arrangement made to ensure that another disturbed individual will not take it upon him or herself to try to kill somebody who is running for president of the United States.
And we're just told by Monica Alba at the White House that Department of Homeland Security is now reviewing that request. So we'll see what happens with that, if that's changed at all. John Brennan, as always, thank you very much.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.